Hello everyone. So in this tutorial, we will cover a basic Java program. This is for those who are um, who are beginning with Java programming. So I'll be using an online compiler, right? If you want, you could install Java and use open source tools such as NetBeans or Eclipse, but I'll be using an online compiler as it is simple and you do not need any installation. So the online compiler that I'm using is point.com compiler. So here I have a basic hello world program, and when I execute, you'll see hello world is printed. So in Java, the to print anything, we have a system class and then we have out.println, right? So just to show that we can have multiple print statements in our main function. So I'll have here Java is awesome. And again, Java is case sensitive, meaning we have to be careful about our cases. And so the lowercase and uppercase, we have to be careful about that. Okay, so if I execute here, the Java is awesome is printed as well. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is create another function here, right? So we are here in a class called Hello World. So those of you who don't know the concept of classes, it's an object-oriented paradigm where we have classes and objects, right? So class is basically a template, and an instance of a class is known as an object, which is a real world entity. So uh, we will be in this class, but then we are not in the main function. Instead, we are going to create another function, and for now I'll leave it as public static void, and we'll discuss what that is. And I'm going to create my function called let's say calculator, right? And I won't pass any parameters here. Then we need curly braces, and I'm gonna say here, or let's pass here two variables, double num1, double num2. So these are two data variables, right? Or these are two two variables, num1 and num2 of data type double. Then here I'm gonna have double result, and I'm gonna say result equals to num1 plus num2. So writing a very basic program here, and return is the keyword when you want to return a particular result, right? So I've created a function called calculator that accepts two parameters and that returns result, that adds those two numbers and then returns the result. Now, since it is returning something, I would have to change from void to double because it is returning. Okay, now if I execute, I do not see the result here because I haven't called this function. So in order to call this function, we have simply written the body of the function, right? So this is the method signature or a body of a method, but we have to call this function. In order to call, I have to go back in my main, and I would have to call here calculator. And since it accepts two parameters, I need to pass two numbers here. So I'm going to say 2.5, comma 3. And since there is a return type, I'm going to assign it to a variable called result, and then I'm going to print that result. right? So now you can see the output is 5.5. So it's simply calculator simply calculates. So two numbers are passed, it adds those numbers, it returns the result. The result is stored in this local variable called result, and then the output is printed in this statement. Right. Now what happens? The function was static, right? Public static. What if I remove static? So I'll write another function here, and I'm not going to make it static this time, and I'm going to make it void, and I'm going to say display, and I won't pass any parameters. And I'll simply have here system.out.println. This is a display function. So just to show you the difference between the static function and a display function or a non-static method in Java, right? So when I do this, what's going to happen is, now I need to call this function. So I'll simply call it in my main, and I'm going to say display. Okay, since it is not returning anything, so I don't need to declare any variable here, and it's not accepting any parameters. It's just a simple function that displays a line. When I execute it, it's going to give me an error, and the reason is because it's a non-static method, and for a non-static method we need it to call it using a class and an object. So what I need to do here is, I am in my class called hello world, so I'll need to say hello world h equals to new keyword hello world, and then I would have to say h dot display, and now if I run, it would work, right? So what happened here is non-static functions or methods cannot be called directly in Java in your main program. You need to have an instance of a class in order to call that function. So I simply created here an instance of a class. The instance of my class name is hello world. The way you create an instance of a class or an object of a class is by new keyword. After this, creating the object, I can call the function, right? So this is the difference between your static and non-static functions. Now let's move to create. Now these were the functions. I don't need, if I am doing procedural kind of a thing, I don't need, classes and different functions here. Let's say I'm in my main. I could now do procedural programming here. So for example, let's declare an array. Now I'm creating an array of data type ARR. The syntax is the data type, the array name, square brackets, and then the elements that you want in it. So let's say I want elements 2, 4, 7, 8, 10. Okay, now, so this is how you declare an array. Okay. Now I want to loop through this array, so the best is to use a for loop. So for integer I is equal to 0, comma, index position starts from 0, right? And I has to be less than arr dot length. So it would go until the last element. So dot length is same as the size of the array. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 elements. So arr dot length meaning 5. Then I plus plus. Inside the bracket. Now I simply want to print this number, right? So if you simply want to print this number, you could say system.out.println, and the element at position I is ARRI. So this is how you simply refer to the elements in an array. So I is the position starting from 0, index position 0. So 0 is at 0 we have 2, at 1 we have 4, at 2 we have 7, at 3 we have 8, and at 4 we have 10. So it starts from 0 and it goes to until 4. Total number of elements are 5, and we are simply saying that the element at position I is ARRI. This is how you refer. Okay, an array. Yes, the problem here is semicolon. We need to have semicolon, right? So the element at position 0 is 2, element at position 1 is 4, element at position 2 is 7, 8, and 10. So we are simply creating an array and we are simply looping through the array. If you want to do any arithmetic operation, you could do this. So if I say here ARRI plus 1, what it is going to do, it's going to add 1 to these numbers. So 2 will become 3, 4 will become 5, 7 will become 8, 8 will become 9, and 10 is going to become 11. So you could do these arithmetic operations inside the square brackets as well. Okay, so the problem here is 0. There is something wrong here. I'll check that out, but I'll leave it to this. Okay, right. So this is also string concatenation, right? So plus sign, what we are doing here is, this is our string, and then we are concatenating string with other element here. Now string concatenation, basically, let's create. So I'm here inside my main, right? So I'm going to create a multi-line comment and I'm going to say this is string operation and then star asterisk. Okay, so I'll create a string s1 and I'll say hello, my name is, and then I'm going to say string 2 s2 and I'm going to say the name. Okay, so I'm declaring here two string values, one s1, one s2, and now I want to do string concatenation, basically meaning adding string 1 and string 2. So there are two ways. Either you could create a new string, let's say s3, and you could say s1 plus s2, and then you could display this string. Okay, so what has happened here? What has happened here? I had one string having the value hello, my name is. I had another string having the value Rashmi Bakshi, and then I'm creating a new string and then adding those strings. Okay, so this is known as string concatenation, combining two strings. Another way to do is using concat function. So you could also say here, if I say s3 dot concat I'm not sure if this is valid in Java 8. Maybe not. It is. Okay, so what I did here is I'm using another way of concating. One way of concating is plus sign, and then another way of concating is using or combining two strings is using a concat function. So just because it looks nicer, I'll give some spaces here. Okay, So we have covered this, and now I'll cover if and else. Okay, so covering if and else loop in Java, it is similar to the way we do it in C, C++. So for example, I have an integer value equals to 4, and I say if, then I'll need to have a condition here. So if my value is less than 10, then execute this piece of block, this piece of code, this block of code. Otherwise, else, if value is equal to 4, execute this piece of code, and else execute this piece of code. Okay, so every if and else would have curly braces. So you have an if, and then you have a condition. If this condition is true, you run this block. If this condition is true, you run this block. Otherwise, you run this block. Okay. We could also do here, if value is less than 10, you could use here relational operators, and value is equal to 4. Okay, then do this. Else, if value is greater than 10, is less than 10, and value is not equal to 4. Else, if value is greater than 10. Okay, so we are basically using here relational operators in our conditions. The value is 4, which is less than 10. Control C. The value is less than 10, but we don't know if it is 4. Okay, and here the value is greater than 10. Okay. Yeah, we need semicolon here. Okay, so the value is 4, which is less than 10. Of course, it's going to run this particular block because it is 4, it is equal to 4, and it is less than 10. Now, what if I make it 2? Now, which block do you think would run? This block is going to run because it is still less than 10, but it is not equal to 2, equal to 4. So the value is less than 10, right? The second block is running. Now, if I make it greater than 10, so let's say I make it 12, it's going to run the third block. Okay, so if, else if, and else if, or you could also have else condition here. So basically, if the condition is true, that particular corresponding block of code will be running. So I'm going to stop it, and in the next tutorial we'll cover some more examples such as palindrome, how to calculate, how to check whether a string is a palindrome or not. Then there's other loops such as switch and case, which is very important, and some more functions and how to create multiple classes in Java.